The Millionaire CEO was all smiles at the charity gala, shaking hands and making speeches, until a little girl tugged at his sleeve, looked up with familiar eyes, and asked, "Are you my daddy?" But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. Night had just fallen over the luxurious grounds of the Ashworth Children's Foundation Charity Gala. An orchestra played soft classical tunes while society's elite paraded across the marble floors, greeting one another with practiced smiles and glasses of sparkling champagne. Nicholas Ashworth, the renowned CEO of Ashworth Capital Holdings, commanded the room with his mere presence. Tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored tuxedo, he wore an expression of polite detachment, just another event among countless philanthropic gatherings he attended each year. Yet, beneath the polished exterior and regal posture, Nicholas couldn't help but feel a familiar tinge of emptiness. Over the past decade, he'd built a financial empire with tireless dedication, chasing every business deal with ruthless precision. But this success came at a price, a personal life carefully walled off to avoid entanglements that might tarnish his reputation or slow his upward climb. That night, he assumed it would be the same as always. A series of handshakes with old money patrons and a round of obligatory speeches about giving back to the community. He had no idea fate was about to hand him the biggest surprise of his life. A hush fell momentarily when Nicholas took the stage to deliver the event's opening remarks. The overhead lights glinted off his sleek black hair as he spoke about compassion, hope, and the importance of nurturing future generations. Applause rippled through the audience on cue, but before he could step down, something unusual caught his eye. At the edge of the crowd, near a gleaming ice sculpture, stood a little girl. She appeared to be 6 or 7 years old, gazing at him with a curious tilt of her head. She wasn't dressed in the typical style you'd see among the wealthy families present. Instead, she wore a simple, slightly worn pink dress, her honey-brown hair tied into 2 neat pigtails. When Nicholas finished his speech and descended the steps, the little girl wove through the adult's legs, unafraid and determined to reach him. He noticed her just as she arrived, her big eyes shining under the overhead chandeliers. Without hesitation, she tugged on the sleeve of his tuxedo and said, in a voice that carried the innocence of childhood, "Daddy, I've been looking for you everywhere." For a moment, the sound of clinking champagne glasses and lively chatter seemed to fade into a strange silence. Nicholas froze, brow furrowing in confusion. "Daddy?" People nearby caught wind of the situation. A few onlookers shot curious glances, others suppressed gasps. Nicholas forced a polite smile, bending down slightly to address the child. "Hello there," he managed, his tone calm but perplexed. "I'm not sure I know who you are." The little girl's face lit up, as though she found his confusion amusing rather than off-putting. "I'm Emma," she declared, matter-of-fact. "My mom said you were here tonight, so I came to find you." Before Nicholas could respond, a flustered woman burst through the crowd. Kate Wilson. Her cheeks glowed red from a mixture of embarrassment and adrenaline. She gently pulled Emma back, avoiding Nicholas's piercing gaze. "Emma!" Kate hissed, kneeling next to her daughter. "We talked about this. You can't just run off like that." Nicholas straightened his posture, struggling to recover his usual composed demeanor, but the intense curiosity in his eyes gave him away. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said quietly, "but why is your daughter calling me Daddy?" Kate looked at him with a desperation that belied her earlier poise. She had no intention of causing a scene in front of half the city's elite. But here they were. Kate, a woman Nicholas had encountered only briefly years before, standing face to face with him as her daughter clung to her arm. Emma gazed up at him, waiting for an explanation she was certain he had. Nicholas stepped aside, leading them both to a more private corner of the ballroom, away from prying ears and cameras. The marble floor extended into a quieter space near the large picture windows that overlooked the foundation's gardens. Outside, decorative lights illuminated meticulously manicured lawns where party guests occasionally strolled for fresh air, but at that moment, none of it mattered more than the wide-eyed little girl standing between Nicholas and Kate. Kate's heart pounded. She'd grappled with mounting debts and a mountain of shame ever since discovering her pregnancy all those years ago. She and Nicholas hadn't exactly been sweethearts. They had met at a business conference when she was working as a junior event assistant. Their fleeting connection turned into a single, intimate night that, for Kate, changed everything. But Nicholas, powerful, admired, forever shielded by an impenetrable facade, was the last person she suspected she could confide in. The memory of her attempts to reach out to him soon after that night still stung. Each letter she wrote, each voicemail she left, remained unanswered. Eventually, she convinced herself that perhaps she hadn't tried hard enough. Or maybe, she told herself, he simply wanted nothing to do with her. But Emma was real. Emma was her beloved daughter. Emma carried Nicholas's dark hair and the distinctive hazel eyes that Kate had never seen in her own family. For so many years, Kate struggled alone, working in cramped restaurants, picking up cleaning jobs, trying and failing to keep herself and Emma fed. Yet now, in a single, unplanned moment, the father stood right there, with the truth shining as bright as the chandeliers above them. "Nicholas," Kate began, her voice trembling, "I'm so sorry about this. Emma, she's been curious about her dad for a while, and I never meant to introduce you like this." His face, so often stoic in board meetings, looked uncharacteristically vulnerable as he listened. "But why now?" Nicholas asked, voice taut. "Why come here, and why let her call me her father? This could be some kind of misunderstanding." For a split second, Kate felt the urge to lash out. After all, she'd tried to tell him long ago, but she reined in her frustration, not wanting Emma to witness an argument. "Nicholas," she said softly, "I did try to reach you, but you're not an easy man to contact. You changed numbers and addresses. I ended up giving up. Emma deserves a father, even if it's only for a moment. She insisted on seeing you tonight, found out you'd be at this gala after she overheard me talking to a friend. I'm sorry if this causes trouble." Nicholas let his gaze drift to Emma. She stared up at him with unwavering trust, her small hand gripping the edge of her mother's dress. An uncomfortable tug in his chest told him that he couldn't simply dismiss her. The possibility that she might be his child sent his mind reeling. The timeline, the features, the eyes, those hazel eyes that were so similar to his own grandmother's. Doubt coiled in him, battling with a growing sense of responsibility he wasn't prepared to handle. Security personnel, alerted to the commotion, moved closer. They recognized their CEO's unusual state of distress. One guard, with a gentle courtesy, leaned in to see if Nicholas needed help. Nicholas, collecting himself, waved him off with a single gesture. "Kate," he said, clearing his throat, "please come to my estate tomorrow morning. We should talk about this, privately." He passed her a business card, no doubt a direct line, not the usual channels filled with assistants and gatekeepers. Kate hesitated, pressing her lips together in uncertainty. Meanwhile, Emma, in her innocent joy, slid her hand into Nicholas's. "I'm so happy to meet you, Daddy," she said simply. "Mom says you're really busy. Do you rescue people?" Nicholas almost laughed at the naive question, but his throat felt too tight. I guess you could say I help businesses," he replied, stumbling over his words. "Not people, exactly." Emma pondered that, shrugged, and then decided it was good enough for now. Kate guided her away before the trio drew even more unwanted attention. As they left, Nicholas was left alone, the crisp white business card absent-mindedly slipping from Kate's fingers into her purse. Onlookers turned back to their cocktails and polite conversations, but the air around him still vibrated with silent questions. He felt the eyes of acquaintances, potential investors, and old friends lingering on him, while a simmering swirl of confusion and unexpected emotion gathered inside him. For once, Nicholas's composed facade cracked, exposing a rare glimpse of uncertainty in his well-ordered life. He had always believed that no surprise could unnerve him. He possessed the intellect, resources, and resolve to handle anything. But the word "daddy," coming from a child who resembled him more than he cared to admit, was the one thing that cut through his defenses completely. And so the night ended, not with the typical applause and social accolades, but with Nicholas slipping away early, retreating to the hushed interior of his limo. His mind spun with illusions of fatherhood and the haunting possibility that, in his single-minded pursuit of power, he'd overlooked the most important piece of all: family. Behind him, the gala continued, sparkling and oblivious, just as the world had always seemed to him. But everything in Nicholas's life had shifted in that single moment, setting the stage for revelations he never imagined, choices he never planned to face, and a bond he couldn't deny even if he wanted to. Morning rays filtered through the half-drawn curtains of Nicholas Ashworth's private study, illuminating the sophisticated decor he'd carefully curated over the years. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the distant hum of house staff moving through the corridors beyond the closed door. Nicholas sat at his expansive mahogany desk, an untouched cup of coffee growing cold beside him, and reread the same line in a contract for the fourth time. No matter how often he blinked and forced his attention back to business, his mind drifted to a pink dress and the small hand that had clutched his at last night's gala. He glanced over the charcoal leather armchair positioned near the fireplace, recalling countless negotiations he'd conducted there, how his silver tongue and meticulous planning typically guaranteed he'd end the meeting with an advantage. But this time, what advantage could there possibly be? The stakes had shifted from mergers and acquisitions to something far more personal and unpredictable: the possibility of being a father. Nicholas pushed himself away from the desk and stood, pacing the study to quell the restlessness pulsing through him. He was accustomed to controlling every variable in his life: schedules, employees, even market shifts. Yet today he felt entirely unprepared. How was he supposed to navigate a conversation with a woman he hadn't seen in years, about a child he never knew existed? His butler, Morris, knocked softly on the door. Nicholas, attempting to mask his unease, cleared his throat and smoothed his lapel. "Enter," he said, voice still tinged with tension. Morris stepped in, bowing his head politely. He was an older gentleman with silver hair, carrying an air of dignity that Nicholas had relied on for years. "Sir," Morris began, "a Miss Kate Wilson has arrived. She's in the foyer with a young girl. Would you like me to escort them to the drawing room?" The air prickled at the sound of Kate's name. Nicholas exhaled, telling himself to remain composed. "Yes," he said, forcing calm, "and arrange for refreshments. Something suitable for a child as well. I'll be there shortly." As Morris departed, Nicholas straightened his suit jacket in the mirror, gazing at his own reflection with a flicker of self-doubt. He tugged at the knot of his tie once, trying to loosen the sudden tightness at his throat. This was it, the moment he'd dreaded and yet was oddly compelled to face. When he arrived in the drawing room, Kate and Emma stood by a large window overlooking a meticulously manicured rose garden. Kate held Emma's hand, whispering reassurances. Nicholas noted how different Kate looked from his faint memory of her at that long-ago conference. She had lost some of the youthful roundness in her face, and her eyes, though still warm, bore subtle evidence of struggle. Her simple navy blue blouse and jeans contrasted sharply with the opulent surroundings. She didn't look like someone in pursuit of wealth or status. She looked like a woman who was simply exhausted from facing life's challenges alone. Emma's gaze, on the other hand, drifted across every gilded detail of the room: paintings, statues, plush furniture. Her wonderment ended the moment she spotted Nicholas. She grinned widely, as if greeting a best friend. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, bounding forward. Nicholas felt his heart jolt. He'd never heard the word daddy directed at him with such exuberance, and it stirred something in him that no corporate triumph had ever managed to. He crouched down, somewhat uncertainly, to meet Emma at eye level. "Hello, Emma," he said, voice quieter than he intended. "Did you and your mom have a good drive over?" Emma nodded eagerly. "I counted the cars on the highway, and Mommy said we might see your big house, and do you really have a swimming pool inside?" Nicholas let out a reluctant chuckle. "It's adjacent to the house in a separate pavilion," he explained. "Maybe you'll see it later." Kate approached with careful steps, feeling the strangeness of this reunion. She murmured thanks for his hospitality, and they all settled onto a plush settee near the fireplace. Morris reappeared to serve tea and glasses of juice, setting a plate of mini pastries on the coffee table before quietly exiting. For a few moments, no one spoke. Emma busied herself with the pastries, trying and failing to nibble politely, while her big eyes darted between her mother and the man who might be her father. Nicholas cleared his throat. "I appreciate you coming," he began stiffly. "I think we need to address this situation properly." Kate's posture tensed. She offered a quick glance at Emma, who was thoroughly engrossed in selecting which pastry to devour next, then turned her focus back to Nicholas. "Yes," she said, folding her hands tightly in her lap. "I'm sure you have questions." Nicholas nodded, struggling to keep emotion from overwhelming the crisp tone he typically reserved for business. "Many. For starters, why didn't you make contact sooner? I recall you tried to reach me, but I never received anything definitive, and then years went by. Did you just decide not to try again?" Kate's cheeks reddened. "I did try, but you'd changed your phone number and address after you moved offices. Your old assistant said you were unavailable. I wrote letters too. If you never got them, then it means someone on your side shut me out." She hesitated, the weight of those difficult memories pressing on her. "And I just assumed you wanted nothing to do with me or the baby. Emma wasn't planned, but she's here and she's everything to me." Silence settled again, punctuated by the quiet clink of Emma's spoon as she stirred her juice. Nicholas inhaled slowly, forcing himself to consider that maybe he had been inaccessible. Even if Kate's letters had reached his office, his staff likely filtered personal mail from the ceaseless flood of business correspondence. But it had never occurred to him that something so vital could be locked out of his notice. "If Emma is truly my daughter," Nicholas continued, choosing his words carefully, "we'll need official confirmation." He glanced at Emma, who paused mid-bite, sensing the adult conversation had shifted. "A paternity test, I mean, though I see strong evidence in her eyes. Still, for everyone's sake, I'd like to be certain." Kate nodded, twisting her fingers together. "I expected as much. Whatever you need. I'm not here to demand money if that's what worries you. But Emma has a right to know her father. If you want to be involved, she deserves that." "Wait!" came Emma's small voice. She set down the spoon and gazed at both adults. "Is something wrong?" Kate attempted a reassuring smile, drawing Emma to her side. "Nothing's wrong, sweetie. We're just talking grown-up things, like appointments. Right, Nicholas?" She used his first name with a slight hesitation, uncertain if such casual familiarity was allowed in this palatial home. Nicholas forced a faint smile. He realized, perhaps for the first time in ages, that he had a yearning to let down his guard. "Yes, that's right," he said quietly, addressing Emma. "Just grown-up business. Nothing for you to worry about." Satisfied for the moment, Emma resumed sipping her juice. Nicholas's focus then returned to Kate. "We'll handle the formalities, the test, and if it confirms that Emma is my daughter, I want to make sure she's taken care of. Her schooling, her medical needs, whatever. I can't undo the years you've spent alone, but I can at least ensure you both won't struggle again." Kate exhaled, a flicker of relief crossing her face. Then it turned to something more complex, perhaps gratitude laced with lingering sadness or pride. "I appreciate that," she said quietly. "I'm not interested in a handout, but I can't deny that things have been difficult." "Difficult how?" Nicholas asked, gentling his tone. He noticed the worn look in her eyes, like someone who'd lost many nights to worry. "I've juggled jobs," she explained. "Cleaning, sewing, some catering. Nothing stable enough to keep the landlord satisfied. I had to choose between paying rent and buying Emma's school supplies sometimes. We've moved around a lot because I couldn't always meet bills." Emma, sensing the tension, leaned her head against Kate's arm. "But it's okay, Mommy," she said softly, as if trying to comfort her. "We always have each other. Remember?" Nicholas's chest tightened at the innocence of the child's words. He was accustomed to discussing multi-million-dollar deals and corporate expansions, but hearing how Kate and Emma wrestled with daily survival struck a chord he didn't know he possessed. Something about the image of them moving from place to place, worried about rent, made the vastness of his estate and his business empire seem hollow. Clearing his throat, he spoke. "Well, that ends now. If Emma is mine, she won't ever face that kind of insecurity again." Kate nodded slowly. A small part of her felt soothed by his assurance, but another part worried about the avalanche of changes that might come from stepping into Nicholas's world. She had to trust that he wouldn't see Emma merely as an obligation, but as a child who needed real love and guidance. Nicholas shifted uncomfortably, eyes flicking to Emma. "Would you like to see the garden?" he ventured, trying for a smile. "You mentioned the pool, but the roses are blooming this time of year. They're rather beautiful." Emma's face lit up with delight, and she scrambled to her feet. "Yes, please," she exclaimed. In the hallway, Nicholas quietly gestured for Morris to prepare a few items for his guests. Perhaps a comfortable suite, in case they decided to stay. He wasn't certain how things would unfold, but he sensed that turning them away immediately would be unthinkable. Morris bowed understandingly, disappearing into the estate's labyrinth of corridors to make arrangements. Soon, Nicholas guided them through the glass doors leading to a broad terrace and manicured lawns. The air smelled faintly of jasmine. Kate walked beside Emma, trailing slightly behind Nicholas, taking in the well-kept hedges, the marble statues, and the long row of vivid roses. Birds sang in the morning light, and for a moment, the weight of uncertainties seemed to lift. As Emma dashed ahead to peer at a butterfly perched on a cluster of pink roses, Nicholas glanced back at Kate. An unspoken mix of emotions passed between them: regret, curiosity, perhaps the tiniest seed of hope. They had been strangers once, bonded briefly by a night of unexpected closeness. Now they faced the prospect of forging something entirely new. Could Nicholas become more than just a wealthy stranger? Could Kate find it in herself to trust him, when trust had so often failed her before? Neither of them had the answers yet, but as the fragrant blossoms swayed gently and Emma's laughter filled the garden, it was clear that fate had handed them another chance, one that would require both pride and fear to be set aside. For the first time in his life, Nicholas Ashworth realized that genuine happiness might not come from sealing the next big deal or maintaining a flawless public image. It could come from embracing the unlikeliest blessing of all: family. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Nicholas's lavish estate, casting geometric patterns along the polished marble floors. The day had transformed what was usually a sterile, hushed home into something more vibrant. Echoes of Emma's laughter now filled the grand hallways, and Kate's footsteps clipped hesitantly behind, still adjusting to the sudden change in her life's direction. In a private corner of the sprawling kitchen, Morris supervised a gentle flurry of activity. The household staff prepared a light lunch, carefully selecting fruits, sandwiches, and small treats that might appeal to a child's taste. Emma, delighted at the novelty of fancy living, hopped up to the countertop with a sparkle in her eyes. She watched with fascination as the chef showed her how to fold a napkin into the shape of a swan. Kate, ever mindful, stood close by, ready to remind her daughter not to touch anything too sharp or hot. But to her relief, the staff remained gracious and patient, indulging Emma's curiosity as though she were their own family. Nicholas drifted into the kitchen, drawn by the friendly commotion he wasn't used to. Typically, he preferred distance, focusing on financial matters and rarely lingering in the domestic spaces. Yet seeing Emma tilt her head and giggle at the swan-shaped napkin, he felt an odd pang, nostalgia for something he'd never actually experienced, the normal warmth of a family gathered around a casual meal. Kate noticed him at the doorway. A fleeting hint of self-consciousness crept into her posture. "They're teaching Emma about napkin origami," she explained, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. "Hope that's not too, disruptive." Nicholas allowed a rare smile, small but genuine. "It's quite all right," he replied. He approached Emma, resting his hand on the counter's edge. "What have you learned so far?" Emma lifted a neatly folded napkin, puffed up with pride. "It's a swan," she declared. "Look, its neck stands up all fancy." She peeked up at Nicholas, clearly wanting his approval. He gently ran a thumb along the napkin swan's makeshift crest. "That's impressive," he said. "Maybe you can teach me next time. I'm not very good at origami." The word rolled off his tongue awkwardly, as though it were foreign to him. Emma broke into a grin. "Deal, Daddy," she said, turning back to shape a second napkin. That word, Daddy, still sparked a tightness in Nicholas's chest, balancing precariously between astonishment and responsibility. Before he could dwell on it further, Morris cleared his throat politely. "Sir, lunch is ready," Morris announced, directing Kate and Emma toward the adjacent breakfast nook, a cozier area than the grand dining hall used for more formal occasions. It featured plush seats by wide glass doors that opened onto a terrace abundant with potted herbs and colorful blooms. They settled at the round table. Nicholas chose the seat across from Emma, while Kate sat to Emma's right, guiding her to set aside the newly folded napkins. The staff quietly served plates with fresh fruit salad, miniature quiches, and delicate sandwiches. Emma picked up a small triangle of sandwich, popping it in her mouth with relish. She paused, her cheeks puffing with bread and cheese. "Mommy, these are so yummy. They cut the crusts off." Kate suppressed a rueful smile. Back in their small apartment, she'd always left the crusts on, too tired or too rushed to indulge in small niceties. "Yes, sweetie," she replied, trying to avoid feeling embarrassed in front of Nicholas and the attentive staff. "It's a treat." Nicholas observed them quietly, sipping from a crystal glass of lemon water. He felt more like a spectator in his own home than ever before. He had always insisted on neat protocols for lunches and dinners, no idle chatter, no clutter. Yet here was Emma talking happily about her day, describing her fascination with the rose garden, and Kate listening with patient attention. The difference was astounding, and he found himself feeling oddly appreciative. Eventually, the topic circled back to the paternity test. Emma had gleaned from bits of adult conversation that some appointment was upcoming, and her curiosity was piqued. "Mommy said we have to see a doctor soon," she mused aloud, popping another fruit piece into her mouth. "Is it for me or for you, Daddy?" Nicholas froze momentarily. Kate's breath hitched as she, too, wondered how best to phrase an explanation suitable for a child. Carefully, Kate set her fork down and spoke gently. "It's just a quick visit," she said. "The doctor will do some tests to make sure you're healthy, and they'll make sure Daddy is healthy, too." She shot Nicholas a glance, hoping he might fill in the gaps without alarming Emma. Nicholas cleared his throat, aware of Emma's inquisitive stare. "It's nothing to worry about," he assured her. "We want to confirm some grown-up details, but it won't hurt, I promise. Maybe just a small pinch. You've probably had little checkups before, right?" Emma nodded. "Uh-huh, like when I got my shots for school. That wasn't so bad." Satisfied, she took another bite of her sandwich. Kate exhaled discreetly, relieved the conversation hadn't escalated. Still, the silent tension between her and Nicholas remained. Both knew that this test was the first real step toward unraveling a tangled history. After lunch, Kate accompanied Emma to the lavish guest suite Nicholas had offered them for the night. Emma gasped at the sight of a canopied bed draped in pastel curtains. She hopped onto the thick mattress with unbridled joy, making it wobble as she pretended to swim through the soft duvet. Kate was about to gently scold her, but seeing Emma's beaming face made her hesitate. The child had never seen such luxury in all her life. Who was Kate to scold her for marveling at it now? Meanwhile, Nicholas retreated to his study, grappling with 100 questions swirling through his mind. He wanted to discuss next steps with Kate more thoroughly. What role he should play if the test confirmed his paternity, how they would handle Emma's schooling, whether or not Kate would remain here until a more permanent arrangement could be made. But each time he tried to organize his thoughts, the memory of Emma's bright smile and that unwavering trust in her big brown eyes derailed him. After a while, he heard a gentle knock at the study door. Kate stood there, her posture uncertain. She was out of her worn jeans and into a simple knee-length dress, something she likely borrowed from the stash of clothing the staff had offered, as it fit her elegantly despite its modesty. "May I come in?" she asked softly. Nicholas gestured for her to enter, removing his reading glasses and setting them aside. "Of course." Kate stepped forward, arms crossed loosely over her chest. "Emma's exploring the suite you gave us," she murmured, offering a small, grateful smile. "She's, beyond excited. Thank you for everything. This is more than we ever expected." Nicholas nodded, feeling uncertain how to respond. "I just want you both to be comfortable," he said. I've been thinking about what happens next." Kate lowered her gaze, nodding in agreement. "The test," she said quietly. "It's scheduled for tomorrow morning at that private clinic you recommended. After that, I guess." "We wait?" "Yes," Nicholas replied. He leaned back in his chair, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. "Normally, test results can take a few days. I do have some influence to expedite them, but either way, we'll have a definitive answer soon." Silence unfurled between them for several beats, each weighing the gravity of their possible new reality. If Emma is his, then what? Would Kate want him involved full-time in Emma's life, or was this just a matter of financial support? Would Nicholas's high-profile standing complicate Emma's sense of normalcy? Nicholas exhaled. "If she's mine," he began, feeling the weight of these words, "I don't intend to be absent. I wouldn't want Emma to feel abandoned. I'm realizing I have a lot to make up for, assuming I'm her father." Kate's eyes shimmered with an emotion that bordered on relief. "All I ever wanted was for Emma to have the chance to know you," she admitted, voice quivering. "We've gotten by, but she's missed so much. A father figure, a stable home. She's smart. She picks up on more than I realize. She's asked about you for so long. I've always told her you were busy, important. I didn't want her to think you didn't care." Nicholas heard the heartbreak behind her carefully composed words. Without conscious thought, he pushed his chair back and stood. "I care now," he said, meeting her gaze steadily. "And if the test confirms what we suspect, I'll make sure Emma knows that. I might not be perfect at it, but I'll try." She nodded, letting out a shaky exhale. "I'm willing to see where this goes," she whispered, "for Emma's sake, and for ours. It's not every day two people get a second chance." He attempted a gentle smile. "No, it's not." Another pause hovered between them, carrying a mixture of past regrets and cautious optimism. Nicholas had never experienced quite this brand of vulnerability. He was accustomed to forging deals, not forging family bonds. Yet, standing in his own study with Kate discussing the future of a little girl who might be his daughter, he sensed the beginning of a change far more meaningful than any business transaction. Kate cleared her throat, offering a slightly embarrassed smile. "I'll let you get back to work," she said. "Tomorrow morning, then?" "Yes. I'll have the car ready by 8. "We'll go together," Nicholas confirmed. "I'll see you at dinner later?" She nodded, stepping back from his desk. "Dinner, yes, we'll be there." As Kate slipped out of the study, Nicholas sank back into his seat, pressing his fingertips to his temple in a rare show of raw tension. He thought of Emma cheerfully bounding on the guest bed, his potential daughter. Then he thought of Kate, who had silently borne this burden for years. If the test proved positive, he'd be forced to reconsider every carefully laid plan he'd ever made. But strangest of all was the feeling that, despite the turmoil, part of him welcomed this disruption. Success, money, power, he'd held all of those firmly in his grasp for as long as he could remember, and yet none of them had ever made him feel what he felt now, a jolting sense that life could hold deeper meaning, if only he'd let himself believe it. In the corridor outside, Kate gently closed the door, her heart thudding from the weight of their conversation. The plush carpet muffled her footsteps, but she felt the resonance of her own worries echo through her mind. Hope was a dangerous thing. She'd learned that the hard way. But Emma was worth every risk. Tomorrow would bring the first real confirmation of whether Nicholas truly belonged in Emma's life, or if the last 6 years had been driven by an unthinkable coincidence. Returning to the guest suite, Kate found Emma already immersed in the novelty of a plush robe, spinning in circles around the room. Seeing her daughter's carefree joy, Kate decided she'd allow herself a moment of optimism too. If fate had opened this door, maybe, just maybe, they'd find a way to step through it together, forging a family unit she never thought possible. Bright morning light poured through the tall windows of Nicholas Ashworth's estate. In the front foyer, the aroma of polished wood mingled with the faint scent of fresh flowers arranged meticulously by the staff at dawn. Kate stood near the sweeping staircase, carefully adjusting Emma's small backpack straps, making sure her daughter's sweater lay neatly over her shoulders. A delicate sense of tension crackled in the air. The day of the paternity test had arrived, and with it came a swirl of anxieties and hopes neither Kate nor Nicholas fully knew how to manage. For Emma, however, the morning's excitement seemed to revolve more around riding in Nicholas's sleek town car than any looming medical procedure. She clutched a small stuffed rabbit in one hand, a toy that had seen better days but held sentimental value. She'd taken to naming it Mr. Cocoa, an echo of her favorite bedtime drink. With a bright smile, she hopped from one foot to the other, eager to embark on this grown-up appointment. Nicholas entered the foyer with composed strides, his crisp charcoal suit a contrast to the gentler day wear Kate and Emma wore. He paused to take them in, Kate exuding a quiet determination despite the subtle worry pinching her features, and Emma practically vibrating with enthusiasm. "Good morning," he greeted, forcing a calmness into his voice. "Shall we head out?" Kate nodded, her thanks implicit in her eyes. She gently guided Emma toward the double doors. Outside, the day was crisp, the driveway glowing under the early sun. The estate's fountains trickled softly, a serene backdrop to their departure. Nicholas's driver, a stoic man named Felix, held open the rear door of the sleek black sedan. Emma climbed in first, her smile widening at the plush interior. Kate slid in beside her, offering a polite nod of greeting to Felix, while Nicholas took the seat across from them so he could watch Emma's excited reactions. The drive to the private clinic began in polite silence. For Emma, even the hum of the engine and the view of passing buildings seemed to be a treat. She pointed out interesting sights, a dog walker with a whole pack in tow, a cyclist maneuvering through traffic, a billboard advertising a new animated film. Nicholas glanced at Kate. He noticed her fingers drumming lightly against Emma's backpack, a clear sign of nerves. He decided to break the tension. "Emma," he said, leaning forward slightly, "are you looking forward to meeting the doctor? They're very nice there. Probably have a special play area for kids like you." Emma brightened. "A play area? That's cool. But it's not like a big hospital, right?" I've been to a big hospital before and it was kind of scary. Nicholas shook his head. No, it's smaller, more private. You won't see any crowded waiting rooms, and we'll be in and out quickly. Kate offered a thankful smile. That's good to know, she said softly, a hint of relief in her tone. They continued riding through the city, wide boulevards lined with grand offices and shops giving way to quieter streets until they arrived at a discreet, modern building. An understated sign near the door read, Medisure Private Clinic, flanked by carefully trimmed hedges. Felix brought the sedan to a gentle stop at the entrance, and Nicholas helped Emma out first, then extended a polite hand to Kate. Inside the clinic, the waiting area was more like a high-end lounge. Tasteful art on the walls, plush seating, and calming piano music piped in overhead. A receptionist welcomed them with a practiced smile, nodding to Nicholas in recognition. Kate squeezed Emma's hand, marveling privately at the difference between this environment and the hectic clinics she'd been to in their neighborhood, where lines stretched out the door and the staff was always overworked. Dr. Morales, the genetic specialist, met them promptly, wearing a reassuring warmth in her expression. She led them down a bright corridor to a private consultation room, introducing a gentle nurse who would collect samples. It'll just be a little swab inside your cheek, sweet girl, the nurse explained to Emma, crouching to her eye level. No needles, no pain, and then we'll do one for your mommy and for Mr. Ashworth, too. Emma's shoulders relaxed. Oh, that's not so bad, she giggled. I thought we might have to get shots. While Emma's cheek swab was collected, Kate stood beside her, arms resting protectively on her daughter's shoulders. Nicholas observed from a few steps away, feeling an odd tug in his chest. He couldn't recall ever being quite so invested in a single moment before. After Emma finished, Kate followed suit, then Nicholas. Each swab was neatly labeled, sealed, and handed off to a lab technician. All done, Dr. Morales announced with a soft smile. Results typically take several business days, but we can expedite this under Mr. Ashworth's request. We should have conclusive findings by the day after tomorrow. Kate felt a knot release in her stomach. Waiting even 2 more days would be an exercise in patience, but it was better than weeks of uncertainty. Thank you, Doctor, she said quietly. We appreciate your time. As they were leaving, Dr. Morales knelt beside Emma, handing her a small sticker, an image of a cartoon dragon wearing a stethoscope. You were very brave, Emma, she praised. Good luck with everything. Emma grinned. Thank you. She turned to Nicholas as they exited the clinic. See, that was easy. Mr. Coco didn't even need to protect me. She waved the stuffed bunny in the air. Nicholas found himself smiling in return, a genuine warmth that caught him by surprise. Indeed it was. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, Thank you, Mr. Coco, for standing guard nonetheless. Outside, they climbed back into the sedan, the tension replaced by a curious hush. Kate exhaled slowly as the city drifted by the windows once more. Now came the hardest part, waiting. Nicholas, typically the one in control of every outcome, looked uncharacteristically subdued. He stared out the window at the passing buildings, expression carefully neutral. Emma, oblivious to the gravity of the silence, hummed under her breath, gazing at the sticker she'd placed on Mr. Coco's soft paw. When they finally returned to the estate, Nicholas invited them to sit out on the terrace for some fresh air before lunch. Emma raced to the far end to watch koi fish swim in a small ornamental pond. Kate joined Nicholas at a nearby wicker table, where a pitcher of lemon-infused water and 2 glasses had been arranged. She cleared her throat. So, 2 days. That's not too long, at least. Nicholas nodded, eyes following Emma's silhouette. She was crouched by the pond's edge, gently tapping the water with her finger, a swirl of orange and white fish darting in response. Yes, he said. I can ask them to notify me as soon as the test is processed. He paused, turning his gaze to Kate. I want you both to feel comfortable staying here until then, assuming that's all right with you." Kate forced a thin smile. "I think it makes sense to keep Emma settled in one place for now, though I don't want to impose." "Don't consider it an imposition," Nicholas said, his voice measured yet sincere. "To be honest, it's nice having you two around." A gentle breeze fluttered across the terrace, ruffling Kate's hair. She regarded Nicholas curiously. The more time she spent with him, the more she saw glimmers of a man different from the polished CEO image he projected. In the lines at the corners of his eyes, she sensed fatigue, maybe even loneliness. She took a sip of the lemon water. "I suppose I never really asked about your life over the last few years," she ventured softly. "I know your career has soared. I've seen your name in financial magazines. But beyond that?" Nicholas set his glass down, the faint clink resonating in the hush. He looked toward Emma again before answering. "Work has been everything, really. My father retired and left me with the responsibility of expanding Ashworth Capital Holdings. I spent years abroad, forging partnerships, acquisitions, traveling so constantly I barely recalled what the estate looked like. I only settled here more permanently after it felt like I couldn't run any faster on that hamster wheel." He paused, lips quirking in a wry half-smile. "It's funny how you can accomplish so much and yet feel not quite satisfied." Kate studied him, empathy softening her gaze. "I understand," she murmured. "Believe it or not, I was chasing a dream once. Thought I'd become a successful event manager, maybe open my own agency. But after Emma came along, my priorities changed. Not by choice necessarily, but I never regretted putting her needs first. She's everything." Nicholas let those words sink in. For him, everything had always revolved around the next deal, the next high-stakes negotiation. He realized with startling clarity that Kate's entire life had revolved around ensuring Emma's happiness. Something about that realization humbled him in a way corporate success never could. They fell into a companionable silence, listening to Emma's excited commentary about the fish, punctuated by the gentle trickle of water from a nearby fountain. After a few moments, Kate shifted in her seat. "Look," she said quietly, "no matter what the test shows, I'm grateful for how kind you've been to Emma. Even if—" She swallowed hard, not wanting to finish the sentence. "Even if it turns out you aren't her father," she thought, but couldn't bring herself to say aloud. Nicholas, however, heard the unspoken possibility. He nodded, something earnest in his expression. "Emma's a remarkable child," he said simply. "Being around her—" He hesitated, then continued. "It reminds me that there's more to life than boardrooms and bottom lines. And I suppose I have you to thank for that." A faint blush colored Kate's cheeks. She reached out reflexively, as if to touch Nicholas's hand, but then pulled back, unsettled by her own impulse. "You're welcome," she whispered, not sure how else to respond. Before the moment could grow too heavy, Emma bounded over. Mr. Coco clutched protectively. "The fish are so pretty," she announced, climbing onto her mother's lap. "Can we feed them next time? Do you have special fish food, Daddy?" Nicholas let out a gentle laugh. "I'm sure we can arrange that," he said. "But for now, how about some lunch? The kitchen staff might have prepared something fun for you again." Emma's face lit up. "Yes, please." Kate stood, balancing Emma on her hip. As they walked inside together, Nicholas followed, reflecting on how seamlessly Emma had begun weaving herself into the everyday fabric of his home. Already she spoke as though they'd known each other for ages. The image tugged at him. A child's innocence and trust could be so absolute. In the grand hallway, Nicholas walked alongside them with a quiet thought swirling. In just 2 days, the question of fatherhood would be answered. While logic told him to maintain composure and brace for any outcome, his heart kept whispering that he already knew. Emma was his. And that realization set off a swirl of emotions. excitement, trepidation, a strange warmth he couldn't label. He stepped forward to guide them to lunch, leading them past the white columns and glittering chandeliers. The estate had witnessed many negotiations, dinners, and celebrations, but never once had it seen Nicholas stand so close to something resembling a family. If the paternity test confirmed what he already suspected, then perhaps this old house and its lonely corridors would finally ring with new life. A life Nicholas never knew he'd been missing until now. Afternoon sunlight stretched across the estate's manicured lawns, warming the marble terraces and reflecting off the still waters of the ornamental pond. Inside, the house felt momentarily peaceful, with Emma's gentle chatter weaving through the corridors. Yet beneath this quiet lull, both Nicholas and Kate braced for the mounting tension of waiting for the paternity test results. Every passing hour nudged them closer to a life-altering truth. At the end of a long hallway, Nicholas's study door stood ajar. Inside, he sat at his massive desk, half-heartedly scanning digital reports on his laptop. Normally, the swirl of stock charts and quarterly projections captivated him, but today, the lines and graphs seemed distant. Nicholas closed his eyes momentarily, a single question dominating his thoughts. Would Emma truly be his daughter? A light knock on the door broke his reverie. Kate appeared hesitantly, lingering at the threshold. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice subdued. "Do you have a minute?" Nicholas gestured for her to enter. He straightened in his seat, switching off the computer screen. "Of course." Stepping into the study, Kate carried herself with a new sense of resolve. She'd spent the last hour reflecting by a window in the guest suite, imagining what the future might hold if tomorrow's phone call confirmed Nicholas as Emma's father. Despite her lingering worries, she realized how important it was to speak openly about practical matters, like Emma's education, medical needs, and living arrangements. She took the chair opposite Nicholas. "I was thinking about logistics," she began, bracing herself for a conversation that would feel oddly formal. "Emma starts school again in a couple of weeks. If the test results turn out as we expect, it'd mean a lot of changes. New environment, new routine. I know your life is very different from ours." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I want Emma to transition smoothly. She's never been in a high-end private school or anything like that. I'd like her to have stability." Nicholas gave a thoughtful nod. "I understand. When the results confirm she's mine, we'll figure out a plan that ensures Emma feels secure. Whether that means enrolling her in the local public school here or exploring private options, we'll do it carefully. I'm not going to uproot her world overnight." Relief flickered across Kate's features. She tapped her fingertips on the desk's gleaming surface, glancing briefly at the framed photos behind Nicholas. His parents, colleagues, and a few charitable ceremonies. There were no personal family photos, except an old snapshot of Nicholas as a child on his father's shoulders. It struck her that while Nicholas was surrounded by wealth, he was also conspicuously alone. "That's good," she said softly. "I appreciate it. Emma's a happy child, but she's sensitive. She notices changes more than she lets on." Then, with a tremor in her voice, she added, "And if the results don't confirm—" Nicholas's face tightened, his eyes dropping to the desk. "Let's cross that bridge if we come to it," he said quietly. He couldn't bring himself to imagine the alternative just yet. The more time he spent with Emma, the more convinced he became that fate wouldn't be so cruel as to let her slip away. "I promise," he continued, meeting Kate's gaze. "No matter what, I'll make sure you both leave here feeling supported." Kate swallowed hard, mustering a grateful nod. "Thank you," she whispered, then rose from her seat. "I'll let you get back to your work. I just wanted to be on the same page." As she turned to go, Nicholas stood as well, stepping around the desk. "Kate," he said gently, causing her to pause. I don't want you to feel like you're alone in any of this. That includes your own future, not just Emma's. If tomorrow's news is what we think it is, then we'll talk about how you see your life, here or wherever it makes sense. All right? A rare, genuine smile curved her lips. All right, she replied. For a moment, the intensity in his expression made her heart pound. She saw in his eyes a sincerity that cut through her doubts, and it both comforted and unsettled her. With a small nod, she slipped back into the hallway, leaving Nicholas alone with his rapid thoughts. Meanwhile, Emma sat cross-legged on the floor of the estate's sunroom, enthralled by an antique chessboard she'd discovered in a glass display cabinet. She'd never seen chess pieces carved with such fine detail. Each knight, bishop, and pawn was its own tiny work of art. The sunroom itself glimmered with tall windows that opened onto the rose gardens, letting in beams of gentle afternoon light. She delicately moved a pawn forward, mimicking a vague memory of having once seen a chess match on TV. She didn't actually know the rules, so she made them up as she went along. A staff member peered in, smiling but didn't interrupt. The presence of a child playing with something so serious and grown-up brightened the mansion's usual hush. After a short while, Nicholas passed by and noticed her hunched over the board. He paused at the entrance, leaning against the wooden frame. "Chess, he said softly. Emma turned, beaming at him. "I found this set. The pieces look like little people. Do you know how to play, Daddy?" That word, Daddy, again filled the air with a tender weight. Nicholas forced down a rush of emotion and stepped inside, nodding. "I do. My father taught me. Would you like me to show you a few moves?" Emma nodded eagerly. He sat next to her, cross-legged on the tiled floor, loosening his tie so it didn't dangle in her face. With patient care, Nicholas picked up a pawn, explaining how it could move forward 1 or 2 spaces on its first turn, then only 1 space after that. Emma's eyes lit up in fascination. "Does it get to be a queen if it makes it to the other side?" she asked, surprising Nicholas with her knowledge. He raised an eyebrow. "Yes, actually. That's called promotion." "How'd you know about that?" Emma shrugged. "A friend at my old apartment was reading a chess book. Sometimes I looked at pictures with him." Nicholas smiled faintly, quietly amazed by her quick mind. He guided her hand to place the pawn correctly. In the next few minutes, he introduced the rook, bishop, and knight, though Emma giggled when he tried to show her the knight's peculiar L-shaped move. She insisted it looked more like a check mark than an L. The moment felt intimate and oddly surreal. Nicholas, the powerful CEO, kneeling on a sun-drenched floor with a child who might be his daughter, explaining the intricacies of a centuries-old board game. He realized how rarely he'd allowed himself these kinds of simple joys. "Daddy," Emma said, setting down a black bishop, "when you were little, did you play chess a lot?" He hesitated. Memories of a strict father pushing him to excel at chess tournaments flickered in his mind. "I did. My father believed it taught discipline and strategy. He was very insistent I practice, but I never played for fun, until now." Emma considered that answer, her brow furrowing as she examined the chessboard. "Maybe we can play for fun," she suggested. "Like, not worry so much about winning all the time, just be silly." Nicholas released a small laugh, somewhat astonished by the concept. "Yes," he said softly, "maybe we can." They continued moving pieces in a haphazard simulation of a chess game, Emma giggling each time she managed to capture one of Nicholas's pieces with an improbable move that defied the actual rules. Eventually, she proudly announced checkmate, though Nicholas couldn't help but notice her rooks and bishop were out of place. He decided not to correct her. Instead, he let her revel in her victory. As Emma gathered the pieces back into neat rows, Kate entered the sunroom, drawn by the sound of laughter. A warm glow spread through her as she watched them. Nicholas caught her eye, and a ghost of a smile passed between them. In that quiet, golden moment, It was easy to believe everything would turn out exactly as they hoped, that the next day would bring the final confirmation that they were, in fact, a family. Yet lurking beneath their tender exchange was the tremor of anticipation, like the hush before a storm. The results of the test, just a day away, would either set their world in motion or bring it crashing down. For now, though, they had these precious hours. Time for a father and a child to share a simple game of chess in the sunshine. Time for a mother to hold on to hope that her struggles might finally see a resolution. Early morning sunlight bathed the estate's immaculate corridors, illuminating every ornate detail from the carved wooden banisters to the antique vases perched atop marble pedestals. Behind one of the many closed doors, Emma slept soundly in the plush guest suite, the same slight smile on her face that often appeared when she dreamt of pleasant things, perhaps the koi pond, the chess pieces, or even the sweet pastries the household staff prepared daily. Kate, however, had woken before dawn, tangled in sheets and weighed down by the anxious anticipation of the day's phone call. She wandered restlessly through the room, smoothing out her wrinkled nightshirt as she checked on Emma every few minutes. The knowledge that, by afternoon, they might learn if Nicholas truly was Emma's father set her nerves on edge. If the test confirmed her hopes, it would vindicate all the struggles she'd faced alone. If it didn't, Kate swallowed hard, unable to complete the thought. Finally, deciding that being in bed would only amplify her restlessness, she dressed in simple clothes, a pair of dark jeans and a soft sweater, and left the suite as quietly as possible, letting Emma continue to slumber. As she stepped into the corridor, the hush of the estate felt almost surreal. No footsteps from staff, no clatter from the kitchen. The morning stillness reminded her of the times she'd tiptoed out of their cramped apartment at dawn to reach her cleaning job on the other side of town. Except this place was exponentially more luxurious, the walls practically humming with old money and well-guarded secrets. She wandered until she found herself on a small balcony overlooking the rear gardens. Dawn painted the horizon in soft pinks and oranges, and in the distance a pair of swans glided across the farthest pond. Leaning against the balustrade, Kate exhaled. The quiet beauty of it all felt like a dream, one she was afraid might dissolve any second. Couldn't sleep either. She turned to see Nicholas stepping onto the balcony, hands in the pockets of his tailored trousers. He wore no tie or jacket, and his shirt sleeves were rolled up, a slight departure from his usual polished veneer. The lines of worry etched into his brow made him look more human than ever before. Kate shook her head. "No, too much on my mind. I guess you're the same." Nicholas nodded. "Yes," he admitted, gaze drifting over the gardens. "Usually I pride myself on controlling every aspect of my life. But this waiting, it's an entirely different kind of pressure." He paused, then added almost in a whisper, "Have you thought about what you'll do if the answer isn't what we expect?" Kate caught the tremor in his voice. "I have," she answered. "But I can't dwell on that. Emma's already so attached to you, and I know it sounds naive, but in my heart, I feel like the test is just a formality." Nicholas's eyes flickered with something like gratitude. He rested his forearms on the balcony rail beside her, studying the soft glow of the rising sun. "Strangely," he said, "I feel the same. Every time I look at her, there's this uncanny sense of familiarity, as if I've known her all along somehow." The two lapsed into silence, letting the delicate chatter of birds fill the space. Neither voiced the deeper fear they carried, that they might be building dreams on the brink of collapse. Finally, Nicholas cleared his throat, gently shifting the conversation. "When Dr. Morales calls," he began, "we should get the results by mid-afternoon. I've asked the staff to set up a quiet room for the phone call so Emma won't be alarmed by any reaction we have." Kate nodded, pressing her lips together. "Thank you," she murmured. I was afraid of how to handle that moment in front of Emma. She's so perceptive. She'll know if something's off. Nicholas inhaled, his chest tightening. We'll figure it out together. For now, let's try not to worry her. She's been so happy here, playing, exploring. I want to preserve that for as long as possible. Kate agreed. Though the day ahead felt like treading on thin ice, neither wanted Emma to shoulder any anxiety. She deserved a morning of peace, no matter how the rest of the day might unfold. By mid-morning, the estate stirred with subdued activity. Emma woke and bounded through the halls in search of breakfast, calling out for her mother and Nicholas with a cheerful lilt that resonated against the high ceilings. She found them in the informal dining room where the staff had laid out a modest spread, scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit. To Emma's delight, there were also small pancakes arranged in a smiley face shape. She clapped her hands, instantly brightening the atmosphere. Kate exchanged a grateful look with Nicholas. The staff's thoughtfulness extended beyond mere duty. They seemed to recognize the unusual tension in the house and strove to keep Emma's world as carefree as possible. Throughout the morning, Nicholas carved out time to show Emma more of the estate's hidden nooks, a small greenhouse with exotic flowers, an attic library filled with dusty old tomes, and even the stables at the far edge of the property. Though no horses had been kept there in years, the large, empty stalls captivated Emma's imagination. She ran around, squealing about galloping ponies, while Kate hovered, laughing at her daughter's antics. Each moment felt precious, a testament to the bond quickly forming between Emma and Nicholas. Kate watched with a mixture of joy and wariness. After all, if the test results somehow shattered their assumption of paternity, what then? She steeled herself to push that fear aside, just for now, letting Emma bask in the excitement of being with Daddy. Noon approached, and the estate's staff discreetly prepared a quiet sitting room for the awaited call. As the clock in the hallway chimed the first notes of noon, Nicholas felt his pulse quicken, as though each resonant gong was echoing inside his chest. Any time in the next few hours, Dr. Morales would phone with the final word. "Want to play in the rose garden again, Mommy?" Emma asked, pulling gently at Kate's hand. "We can pick some flowers for Mr. Coco's hat." Kate ran her fingers through Emma's hair. "Sure, sweetheart," she replied, grateful for a distraction that kept her from staring at the silent phone. She glanced at Nicholas, who nodded reassuringly, as if to say he'd alert her the moment Dr. Morales called. Outside, the afternoon sun glowed over the rows of roses in bloom. Kate and Emma wandered between the bursts of pink, red, and white petals, a pair of garden shears in hand. Emma sang softly to herself, snipping a few blossoms for her imaginary project. Meanwhile, Kate kept her phone in her pocket, set to vibrate. She wasn't sure if Dr. Morales would call her instead, in case Nicholas was busy. Every buzz or beep made her heart lurch, but no call came. Eventually, Emma knelt by a low bench, carefully placing roses along Mr. Coco's head. She giggled at her own handiwork, oblivious to the nervous energy swirling around her. Kate managed a warm smile, even as her stomach clenched. She prayed silently, "Let it be good news. Let it be true." Back in the house, Nicholas had retreated to his office, determined to tackle some paperwork to distract from the ticking clock. Yet every time the phone on his desk gave the faintest beep, some automated system or a mild connection check, his heart jumped. With a frustrated sigh, he realized he was barely skimming the documents on his screen. Out of sheer restlessness, he stood and walked over to a decorative shelf lined with awards, trophies, and photos, tokens of his professional triumphs. He reached for one framed certificate, recalling the hours he'd poured into that project, the sleepless nights, the single-minded dedication. Now, it felt strangely hollow. If fatherhood truly awaited him, all of these accolades would pale in comparison. His phone rang, a sharp trill slicing through the silence. Nicholas froze. The caller ID showed the clinic's number. Carefully, he steadied himself and answered. "Mr. Ashworth?" came Dr. Morales's calm voice. "I have the results you've been waiting for." Nicholas's hand clenched around the receiver. "Yes," he said, voice low. "Go on." The doctor provided a measured explanation, detailing the steps they'd taken to confirm accuracy. Nicholas's breath caught in his throat, waiting for the definitive statement. Finally, Dr. Morales read him the results in a clinical but sympathetic tone. "It's a positive match, sir. There's a higher than 99.9% probability that Emma is your biological daughter." For a long moment, Nicholas couldn't speak. Relief and a fierce rush of emotion surged through him. His eyes stung with tears he struggled to hold back. This was it. The words slammed into his chest, confirming what he had, in fact, already sensed in his heart. "Thank you, doctor," he managed, his voice hushed. Thank you." They ended the call shortly after, with the doctor promising to email and courier official documentation. Nicholas set the phone down, exhaling shakily. Emma was his daughter. The fact blazed through him, carrying joy and a flicker of heartbreak for the years they had lost. Pushing aside his swirling thoughts, he hurried to find Kate. He wanted to be the one to tell her, to see her face when she learned that all her hardships had led to this certain truth, that Emma had a father who was ready to stand by her side. Kate was in the rose garden, still watching Emma assemble hats for Mr. Coco. The moment Nicholas appeared at the garden's entrance, Kate noticed the shift in his posture, shoulders squared, face bright with an unguarded exhilaration she'd never seen on him. She rose from the bench, heart drumming with a wild hope. "Nicholas?" she asked, almost breathless. "Did you?" He nodded. "I spoke to Dr. Morales just now." He paused, swallowing around the emotion lodged in his throat. "It's positive, Kate. Emma? She's mine." For an instant, Kate closed her eyes, letting out a ragged breath that was half laugh, half sob. Her chest felt light, like a years-long burden had finally lifted. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears threatening to spill. "Oh my God," she murmured, her voice trembling. Thank you. Thank you." Nicholas stepped forward, instinctively wrapping her in an embrace. He felt her shoulders shaking in quiet relief. The rose garden seemed to glow brighter, or maybe it was just the rush of joy that flooded them both. After a few seconds, Kate pulled away, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. She gestured to Emma, who was perched on the bench, eyeing them both with innocent curiosity. "We should tell her," Kate said, voice unsteady but thrilled. Nicholas nodded, turning to Emma with a tenderness shining in his eyes. He walked over, crouching beside her. Emma tilted her head, still sporting her makeshift crown of rose petals. Mr. Coco wore a matching floral piece that wobbled as she held him up. "Emma," Nicholas said quietly, "I have something really important to tell you. You know how we visited the doctor the other day? The one who took a sample from our cheeks?" She nodded eagerly. "Yeah, the lady who gave me the dragon sticker." He smiled. "That's right. Well, it turns out we have proof now. Proof that that I'm your father." Emma's eyes widened. "Really?" she whispered, her small face lighting up. "So it wasn't just me guessing?" Nicholas's voice turned husky with emotion. "No guessing. It's real. You're my daughter, Emma." For a moment, Emma just stared at him as if processing the news. Then her face broke into a radiant grin. She launched herself forward, throwing her arms around his neck. Nicholas nearly lost his balance, but quickly steadied, hugging her back with a gentleness that disguised the intensity of his feelings. Kate stood a few feet away, tears clinging to her eyelashes. She watched them, a mixture of gratitude and triumph warring with a poignant sense of lost time. Yet at that moment the regrets of the past seemed to fade in the garden's golden light. The future, finally, was here, and it was bursting with possibilities. Emma pulled back slightly, gazing at Nicholas. "So, you won't leave us, right?" Nicholas felt his heart twist. "No, Emma," he said firmly, "I'm not going to leave you or your mom. We'll be a family now." He cast a meaningful glance at Kate, who nodded, understanding that they still had many details to work out, but the essential truth was firmly in place. With tears brimming, Kate stepped closer, joining the hug. Emma giggled as Kate and Nicholas's arms enfolded her from both sides, their laughter punctuated by quiet sobs of joy. The roses rustled in a light breeze, petals drifting around them like confetti. For once, in a life used to uncertainty and hardship, Kate felt a sense of completeness so strong it made her dizzy. She glanced at Nicholas, whose eyes shone with equal parts relief and wonder. In that stolen moment beside the blooming roses with the afternoon sun caressing their faces, the three of them clung to each other, exhaling the fears, the questions, the lonely years. They might not have known exactly what lay ahead, but one certainty was etched forever. They were bound by blood, and, more importantly, by love. Twilight settled gently over the estate, as though the setting sun itself sensed the transformation unfolding within its walls. After the emotional scene in the rose garden, Nicholas invited Kate and Emma for a quiet dinner in one of the smaller dining rooms, an intimate space he rarely used, designed for family gatherings rather than lavish banquets. Even the staff seemed aware of the day's significance. The typically formal atmosphere carried a new warmth, and the table had been set with understated elegance, soft candlelight, fresh flowers, and a simple yet thoughtful menu. Emma bounced excitedly in her seat, still glowing with the realization that Nicholas was definitively, indisputably her father. While Kate helped her straighten her napkin, she cast occasional glances at Nicholas, smiles passing between them like a private language of relief and new beginnings. Across the table, Nicholas watched them both with an intensity that he tried to mask with casual conversation. He was still processing his own flood of emotions, torn between elation and a sobering sense of responsibility. "Mommy," Emma said, happily sipping the fresh-squeezed juice the staff had provided, "can we stay up late to celebrate? I want to play that game with the funny horse piece again." She referred, of course, to chess, though she still hadn't quite mastered the rules. Kate chuckled softly, smoothing Emma's hair. "We'll see about staying up late, sweetie. It's been a big day. You might conk out earlier than you think." Nicholas leaned forward, elbows resting on the table, an uncharacteristically relaxed posture for him. "If you do want to play," he said to Emma, "I can set up the board in the library after dinner. And we can create some of your own rules, too, if that's more fun," he added, recalling how Emma preferred to zigzag the rooks and catapult the knights wherever she pleased. Her eyes widened. "Yes, thank you, Daddy." That word, spoken with so much pride, made Nicholas's breath catch momentarily. He glanced at Kate, whose warm, understanding look told him she felt it too, the wonder of hearing Emma call him that name with no reservation. A discreet knock announced Morris's arrival, carrying a bottle of vintage wine along with 3 glasses. Though one was clearly smaller, intended for juice or water, he placed them on the table with a polite inclination. "I thought, sir, that you might like to toast the day's news," he suggested softly, in the refined tone that had served the Ashworth family for decades. Nicholas hesitated, remembering that Emma was present, but Morris had already accounted for that. The smaller glass, filled with sparkling grape juice, would let Emma join in the celebratory toast. Kate met Nicholas's eyes, a gentle question in her gaze. Would it be too presumptuous to celebrate so formally? Yet Nicholas felt a tug in his chest, urging him not to let this day end without acknowledging just how monumental it was. Clearing his throat, he thanked Morris and waited until the butler poured 2 glasses of wine for himself and Kate, along with the bubbly juice for Emma. Then Nicholas lifted his glass, his gaze shifting between Kate and Emma. "I'm not the best at speeches," he began, voice unsteady with emotion, "especially when they're not written for business events. But today is different. Today, I found out I'm a father. a word I never thought would apply to me. I'm honored to have you both in my life." He paused, trying to steady the tremor beneath his words. "Kate, thank you for raising our daughter so well, even when everything was stacked against you. Emma, thank you for being you, for bringing a kind of light I didn't realize I needed." Kate's eyes filled with tears. She lifted her glass as well. "Thank you for opening your home and your heart to us," she said, her voice soft and sincere. "I never thought we'd stand here like this. It's more than I ever hoped for." Emma lifted her little glass, brow furrowed with intense concentration as she tried to match the grown-up's solemnity. She said, giggling. "Thank you, Mommy and Daddy, for letting me have fancy pancakes for breakfast, and for being so nice. Cheers!" She clinked her glass lightly against theirs, a wide grin on her face. The three sipped their drinks, a hush settling over the room. A hush not of tension, but of shared awe. In that quiet, even the candles seemed to flicker with renewed warmth. Dinner began with a simple soup, followed by baked salmon and seasonal vegetables. Emma, normally quick to chatter, found herself enthralled by trying to master the grown-up silverware. Kate aided her discreetly, remembering how, in their old life, they often ate from mismatched plates, too preoccupied with bills to fuss over formalities. Now, seeing her daughter adapt to this new environment brought both gratitude and a tinge of sadness for the time gone by. Nicholas caught Kate's reflective stare and offered a small, understanding smile. He could guess some of the thoughts crossing her mind. He vowed silently that he wouldn't let them be overshadowed by regrets. The future, at least, was theirs to shape. "So," he ventured, voice gentle, "after tonight, what do you think we should do next? We haven't discussed living arrangements. You're both welcome to stay here as long as you'd like. But if you have other plans or prefer a place of your own, I understand." Kate set down her fork, glancing at Emma, who was now engrossed in cutting her salmon into tiny shapes. I don't know yet," she admitted. "Part of me is worried about imposing, but at the same time, Emma's so happy here, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't relieved to have the help. Plus, we should probably figure out a new school for her if we stay in this area." Nicholas leaned forward. "You wouldn't be imposing," he reassured. "This house, it's felt empty for a long time. You and Emma have already brought it more life than I've seen in years." He glanced at Emma, who beamed at him. Kate swallowed. She'd spent so long doing everything alone that the idea of permanent support felt both comforting and intimidating. "If you're sure," she said, managing a small smile, "then we'll stay at least until we can map out what's best for Emma. I don't want to uproot her again without a clear plan." A barely contained wave of relief washed over Nicholas. "That makes sense," he agreed. "We'll handle the details together, one step at a time." Their conversation shifted to lighter topics. Emma's favorite books, Nicholas's recollection of childhood pranks he once pulled, to Emma's great amusement, and Kate's experiences juggling multiple jobs. The more they talked, the more they discovered small echoes of similarity, those subtle overlaps that hinted at how they might blend into each other's lives. After dinner, Nicholas kept his promise. He guided them to the quiet library at the far end of the house, a place with tall shelves of books reaching up to an ornate ceiling. A large antique globe occupied one corner, and a massive fireplace anchored the other. While Kate settled into a comfortable armchair, Emma leapt up to a low table where Nicholas set up the chessboard. This time she insisted on decorating some of the pieces with tiny flower petals she'd saved from the garden. Between giggles and half-serious moves, Emma and Nicholas faced off in a truly chaotic match. Pawns hopped over knights, rooks slid diagonally in direct violation of chess rules, but the mood was too joyous to care. Kate watched them from her armchair, content to let the warmth of the fireplace mix with the warmth in her heart. Eventually, Emma's yawns began to punctuate her laughter, her eyelids drooping. Kate urged her to say goodnight, guiding her upstairs to the suite that Nicholas had so generously provided. Emma clutched Mr. Coco and waved drowsily at Nicholas. "Night, Daddy," she whispered, voice soft with half-asleep happiness. Nicholas watched them go, a gentle smile on his lips. Once they disappeared up the winding staircase, he let himself sink into a nearby armchair. Even with all the contentment, the day's significance and the swirl of emotions weighed on him. His mind raced through the implications of fatherhood, how he would balance his corporate responsibilities, how he could ensure Emma never felt neglected, how he'd protect her from the harsh spotlight that inevitably accompanied his name. He realized, with a quiet laugh at himself, that for once in his life he had no neat blueprint. There was no business model for fatherhood, no bullet-point agenda that could solve the complexities of parenting. It would be a new frontier, equal parts exhilarating and terrifying. As if reading his thoughts, Kate returned to the library, her footsteps light on the carpet. She'd checked on Emma, who now slept peacefully, her day of excitement finally catching up to her. Kate paused by the armchair, seeing Nicholas lost in thought. "You okay?" she asked softly, settling into the seat beside him. Nicholas turned to her, exhaling a soft chuckle. "Just trying to process everything," he admitted. "It's like my life's turned upside down in the best possible way." Kate nodded, folding her hands in her lap. "I get it," she said. "Sometimes I look at Emma, and I'm in awe of how much she's grown, how resilient she is, but each new phase is unpredictable." He considered her words, seeing the hint of exhaustion beneath her sincerity. "You've carried this alone for so long," he said gently. "I want to share that load now, and not just financially. I mean, truly be there. You shouldn't have to do it all alone anymore." She studied him, searching his gaze for any sign that this was an empty promise. But all she found was genuine resolve. After a moment, her lips curved into a tentative smile. "Thank you," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "That means more than I can say." Nicholas reached out and carefully placed his hand over hers. The contact was brief, but electric. Neither pulled away. In the flickering glow of the fireplace, the two sat in a companionable silence, breathing in the quiet reality of this unexpected family they were forming. Outside, the estate lay draped in moonlight, the gardens resting after a day filled with revelations. In the far corner, the rose bushes swayed gently in the evening breeze, as if nodding approval. Upstairs, Emma dreamed in the comfort of a secure home, blissfully unaware of her parents' tender, unspoken commitment to give her the kind of life she deserved. And in the library, for the first time in years, Nicholas didn't feel restless. There was no pressing business deal waiting to keep him awake, no frantic deadlines to chase. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, introducing Emma to his extended family, dealing with the media, figuring out how to merge their lives. But for tonight, they could exist in this fragile bubble of hope. A father, a mother, and a sleeping child with a bright future ahead of her. It was more than enough. Morning came gently, with pale sunlight slipping through the curtains of the Ashworth estate. Though the household was often stirring by this hour, staff preparing breakfast, gardeners tending the lawns, today carried a special sense of anticipation. It was the first day in which Kate and Emma awoke fully assured of Nicholas's place in their lives, and the three of them moved through the halls as though each moment was a precious gift. Kate had risen early again, slipping into the oversized robe the household staff had supplied. She wandered through the corridor, collecting her thoughts. Life had changed more in the past few days than in all her years of struggling. She still felt that cautious voice in her mind, reminding her that big changes often brought new hurdles. But for once, hope outweighed worry. Emma would never again question who her father was, and Kate would never again shoulder life's hardships alone. Turning a corner, she found herself at the foot of the grand staircase leading down to the foyer. She heard Nicholas's voice floating up from below, speaking in low, measured tones, and realized he must be on an early phone call, perhaps some business matter that couldn't wait. When she quietly approached, she spotted him standing near a tall window, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand drumming against the glass. Even from a distance, she sensed a subtle tension in his posture. Nicholas ended the call just as Kate reached the bottom step. He turned, glimpsing her in the robe, hair still a bit tousled, and his expression softened. "Good morning," he said quietly. "Morning," she replied, noticing a flicker of concern in his eyes. "Everything all right?" He exhaled, slipping his phone into his pocket. "Mostly," he said. "Just a few loose ends at work. I had to finalize some details on a partnership. I tried to keep it brief, but they insisted on a call at dawn." Kate offered a sympathetic smile. "I suppose a CEO's work never really ends." "No, it doesn't," he admitted. Then, gently changing the subject, he took a step closer. "I was thinking we could have breakfast on the terrace today. Emma loves the garden, and it's a perfect morning for it." "That sounds wonderful," Kate agreed, relieved to see his mood lighten. "Let me just change, and I'll bring Emma down." Nicholas touched her arm lightly, stopping her before she turned. "Kate," he began, voice lowered, "I want you to know I'm all in on this. Balancing my business and fatherhood, I'll figure it out, but I won't let Emma down. Or you." Warmth bloomed in her chest. "I believe you," she whispered, giving his hand a small squeeze. "We'll do this together." With that, she ascended the stairs, heart buoyed by the genuine conviction in Nicholas's voice. Moments later, she stepped into the guest suite she shared with Emma, where her daughter was already wide awake, rummaging through the small closet. Emma held up 2 dresses, one pink, one yellow, apparently undecided. "Mommy, which one is better for breakfast?" she asked, her face scrunched in serious concentration. Kate laughed gently. "They're both fine, sweetie, but since we'll be on the terrace, maybe the yellow one? It'll look nice in the sunshine." Emma beamed, nodding before wriggling into the cheerful yellow dress. As Kate brushed her daughter's hair, Emma chattered about the koi fish, the chessboard, and her grand plan to teach Mr. Coco how to shake hands. This was Emma's new normal, a life where curiosity outpaced any sense of scarcity or fear. Kate felt a sting of gratitude that threatened to become tears. She blinked them away, focusing on tying Emma's bow neatly. Before long, they joined Nicholas outside, stepping onto the terrace where a long table had been set with fresh fruit, pastries, and a few hot dishes kept warm under silver covers. A gentle breeze carried the aroma of blooming flowers. Emma ran to the railing, peering at the rose garden below, while Nicholas and Kate made their way to the table. Nicholas helped Emma onto a seat, then turned to Kate. "I asked the staff to make some of your favorites," he said softly. "I remembered you once mentioned croissants were a special treat. I hope that was still true?" Kate's eyes widened, touched by the gesture. "I can't believe you remembered," she said, her voice catching. "It's been so long." He shrugged, somewhat shyly. "I remember more than you think." He pulled out her chair, and she settled down. For a moment they exchanged a private smile, the memory of their brief but unforgettable connection years ago floating between them. The three began their meal together, Emma excitedly pointing out the birds that hopped along the terrace ledge, hoping for crumbs. Nicholas, typically composed, found himself chuckling at her endless commentary about the fancy plates and the yummy jam. Kate, meanwhile, marveled at how easily they were settling into this routine that felt oddly like family life. Yet, as they sampled the pastries, talk eventually drifted toward practical matters. Emma needed to be enrolled in a local school, or perhaps a well-regarded private one. Kate had reservations about uprooting Emma's education again, but Nicholas assured her they would proceed carefully. Kate also brought up the question of her own future. She wanted to work, to contribute, even if Nicholas's wealth meant they'd never want for anything. "I don't want to sound ungrateful," she said, pushing a stray crumb around her plate. "But I've always worked. I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable just doing nothing, even if you're able to support us." Nicholas leaned back in his chair, absorbing her words. "I understand," he said. "I wouldn't expect you to give up your independence. Maybe we can find a role for you, something that aligns with your skills in event management or something else you're passionate about. Ashworth Capital sponsors various philanthropic events. You could help oversee those projects if you'd like." Kate's eyes lit up. "That actually sounds amazing. Organizing charity galas, corporate events. That's my wheelhouse. I wouldn't mind being involved again, especially if it helps me provide for Emma in my own way." He nodded, a small smile on his lips. "Then let's consider it a plan," he said. "If you want it, the opportunity's there." Emma looked up, fruit salad spoon halfway to her mouth. "Does that mean Mommy's going to work with you, Daddy? Will she be your boss?" Both adults laughed at the earnest question. Kate gently tapped Emma's nose. "Something like that, Munchkin. We'll see how it goes." Later that morning, while Kate sorted through potential school options for Emma in an upstairs study, Nicholas found himself wandering the mansion alone, lost in thought. He passed a series of portraits depicting generations of Ashworths, stern-faced men in impeccable suits, elegant women clad in period fashions. Each figure seemed to glare down with silent expectation, reminding Nicholas of the legacy he carried. His own father had once been counted among these austere images. Decades of tradition shaped how the family name was perceived in high society. Yet now Nicholas had a new sense of purpose. He found himself at the door of a seldom-used wing of the mansion. With a turn of a brass knob, he stepped into a large, airy room that once served as a children's play area for his cousins, who had visited during the summers. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through tall windows. Stacked against a wall lay old toys, a rocking horse with chipped paint, and a trunk stuffed with puzzles. He hadn't paid much attention to this space in years, but a sudden inspiration seized him. Perhaps he could refurbish it for Emma, let her have a place to call her own within this expansive house. He trailed a hand along the rocking horse's mane, promising silently to give Emma the kind of carefree childhood he never had. This estate, once a fortress of ambition and solitude, was on the brink of transformation, echoing with a child's laughter and scattered crayons, eventually free from the ghosts of a lonely past. As afternoon arrived, Emma dozed off for a short nap, exhausted by the morning's excitement. Kate took the opportunity to finalize some school details, researching enrollment deadlines and required documents. Nicholas had stepped out to his office in town for a crucial meeting, but he texted Kate updates on his progress and a photo of a potential campus he'd driven by, which boasted an impressive arts program. The fact that Nicholas was taking such an active role in Emma's education both thrilled and slightly overwhelmed Kate. She was used to bearing these burdens alone, but now she had a capable partner. By mid-afternoon, Emma woke from her nap, yawning and stretching. Kate coaxed her into comfortable shoes and suggested they stroll through the grounds again. Her reasoning, unspoken, was that Emma might soon be immersed in a school routine with less freedom to roam. While strolling among the rose bushes and shaped hedges, Kate broached the topic of possibly starting a new school soon. "Daddy says there's a lovely school close by," Kate explained. "It might be different than what you're used to. Smaller classes, maybe uniforms. How do you feel about that?" Emma considered it, swatting at a flower petal that drifted by. "If Daddy says it's nice, I trust him," she said plainly. Then she turned her big eyes toward Kate. "You'll still pick me up, right? Or Daddy will? I don't want to go on long bus rides again." Kate's heart squeezed at the memory of Emma trudging off to the old city bus each morning in their previous life. "We'll figure out a way to make it easy for you," she promised, hugging her daughter gently. "No more long bus rides." They continued along a winding path lined with fragrant lavender. For Kate, each step symbolized forward momentum, away from scarcity toward a stable future. For Emma, it was a carefree wander, a moment to simply be a child. And for Nicholas, though he wasn't physically there, his vision for their shared life took shape in subtle ways: the newly manicured walkway, the promise of a better school, and the quiet acceptance that everything he'd built in business was secondary to what he was building now: a real family. Early evening approached, and the staff began preparing dinner. Kate and Emma returned inside to discover Nicholas waiting for them in the foyer, a subtle excitement in his eyes. He shrugged off his suit jacket, draping it over a chair. "I have a surprise," he announced, leading them to a sleek black car parked at the entrance. "Care to take a short drive?" "Curious," Kate agreed, buckling Emma into the back seat. They navigated out of the estate's gate, winding along a country road framed by ancient oaks until they reached a small park overlooking a tranquil lake. The sky swirled with pastel hues, pink, lavender, and gold, while the setting sun dipped behind the distant hills. "I used to come here as a child," Nicholas explained, parking near a gentle slope that led to the lake's shore. "My mother would pack a picnic and we'd watch the sunset. Thought Emma might like it." Emma hopped out of the car, wide-eyed at the shimmering water. She dashed forward to dip her toes at the water's edge. Kate followed, smiling at the playful glimmer in her daughter's eyes. "And Nicholas?" He lingered for a moment, inhaling the crisp air, memories of his mother's laughter mingling with the image of Emma skipping stones. Kate noticed him standing with a slightly distant expression. She walked back to his side. "Thank you," she whispered, "for sharing this with us." His gaze flicked to hers, and the corner of his mouth quirked. "It felt right," he murmured, taking her hand. "I want Emma to have more than just a fancy house. I want her to have moments like this, normal family memories." Kate leaned her head against his shoulder, letting a serene hush fall over them. Down by the water, Emma bent to scoop up smooth pebbles, trying to fling them in wide arcs. With each splash, her delighted giggle rose through the evening air. They stayed there until dusk deepened, the horizon aflame in vibrant orange. Eventually, Emma grew tired, leaning on Kate's arm as they strolled back to the car. On the ride home, she fell asleep, her head lolling gently. Nicholas glanced in the rearview mirror, eyes shining with affection. No words were needed between him and Kate. Their shared gratitude hummed in the soft hush of the car. Tonight was just another sign that building a family wasn't about grand gestures alone, but about creating a tapestry of small, precious moments: a nature walk, a shared sunrise, a child's laughter echoing off the water. Back at the estate, Nicholas carried Emma inside, her small arms looped trustingly around his neck while Kate followed closely. This was their new reality, a little messy, full of unknowns, but undeniably alive with love. Tomorrow, they'd awaken to new challenges and joys, continuing the process of forging bonds that distance and circumstance had once threatened to sever. But tonight, they let themselves drift in the comfort of having found each other. A father, a mother, and a child forging a life from the seeds of a single unexpected encounter. The morning dawned crisp and bright, but inside Ashworth Capital's towering glass headquarters, the atmosphere felt noticeably charged. Nicholas had decided the time had come to formally introduce Kate and Emma to a few trusted colleagues, and by extension, begin laying the groundwork for when the public inevitably discovered he had a daughter. It was the kind of day Nicholas once approached with precise, calculated calm, but now he felt mild nerves prickling at the edge of his usually steady demeanor. He'd arranged a private meeting in the executive conference room on the top floor of the company's main office building. The purpose was simple. He wanted to explain to key members of his leadership team why there would be some necessary rearrangements in his schedule and perhaps even changes in how he managed daily operations. Though it wasn't common for a CEO to publicly address personal matters, Nicholas believed transparency with his inner circle would help avoid rumors spinning out of control. At the estate, Kate helped Emma dress in a smart outfit: a sky blue cardigan, a white blouse, and neat black pants. The look was polished, yet still child-friendly. Meanwhile, Kate chose a simple navy dress that complemented her figure without appearing too formal. She sensed Nicholas's anxiety. He'd been up earlier than usual, triple-checking arrangements, calling his assistant twice to confirm the logistics. When the three of them arrived downtown, Emma's eyes grew wide at the towering skyscrapers. The building soared above them, its reflective windows catching the morning sun. For a moment she clung to Kate's hand, a touch overwhelmed by the bustling city life swirling on the sidewalks. Nicholas gently guided them through the sleek lobby, where polished floors gleamed under bright lights and a row of friendly receptionists offered respectful nods. Kate felt a twinge of awe, realizing how rarely she'd ventured into these upscale business environments. Emma, for her part, mostly marveled at the giant abstract sculpture in the middle of the lobby, a swirl of metal that reflected her face in funny distortions. They rode the elevator up to the executive floor, joined by two of Nicholas's well-groomed assistants who greeted Emma with kind smiles. The ride felt weighty with anticipation. Kate rested a hand on Emma's shoulder, silently communicating reassurance. Nicholas glanced at them, exhaling as the doors slid open to reveal a plush corridor leading to his office suite. In the conference room, a handful of senior executives waited, men and women who'd shaped Ashworth Capital's successes and expansions. They rose politely when Nicholas entered with Kate and Emma. Some recognized Kate's face from past photos, or from the short time she and Nicholas had crossed paths years back. Others had never seen her before. Emma stayed close, slightly shy around these polished strangers in suits. Nicholas invited Kate and Emma to settle in plush chairs around the large oval table. The walls were lined with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panorama of the city skyline. A hush of respectful curiosity filled the air. Everyone knew something big was about to be shared. Taking a steadying breath, Nicholas began. "Thank you all for joining me on short notice," he said, his voice calm but carrying a note of sincerity that was unusual in corporate settings. "You've stood by me through countless deals and expansions. Today I need your understanding on a personal matter." He paused briefly, flicking his gaze to Kate and Emma. "This is my daughter, Emma," he continued, voice thickening with emotion, "and Kate Wilson, her mother. I've recently discovered Emma is, in fact, my child. Many of you know how private I usually am, but I owe you an explanation about why I'll be adjusting certain aspects of my schedule and responsibilities in the coming weeks." Emma offered a timid wave, a small, shy smile dancing on her lips. Kate nodded, scanning the faces of Nicholas's executive team. She expected to see shock or confusion, but mostly she saw warm acceptance. A tall man in a tailored suit, one of the company's longest-serving executives, broke into a grin. "That's wonderful news, sir," he said. "Congratulations." A wave of quiet murmurs and supportive nods rippled around the table. One woman with salt-and-pepper hair, the CFO, stepped forward. "We've always respected your commitment to the company, Nicholas," she said softly. "I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say we'll do whatever it takes to help you balance your new family life with your role here." Relief spread through Nicholas's chest like a warm tide. He cast a grateful look at his team, then to Kate, who returned an encouraging smile. Emma, though still slightly apprehensive, sensed the positive energy and let out a small breath she'd been holding. They spent the next half hour addressing practical points. Nicholas explained how he might need to delegate certain trips or delegate more oversight to his executives so he could be physically present for Emma's major life transitions, like school enrollment, extracurriculars, even doctor appointments. His team listened attentively, asking clarifying questions and offering suggestions that might help lighten Nicholas's load. In truth, some had already witnessed how Nicholas ran himself ragged, traveling between cities and continents at a grueling pace. They seemed relieved that he would finally allow others to shoulder more responsibilities. Kate, observing quietly, realized that Nicholas's leadership style, direct, firm, but fair, had fostered genuine loyalty among these executives. Their supportive reaction wasn't merely out of fear or corporate sycophancy, but out of respect and care for a leader they admired. It reassured her that Emma's father was not only capable in business, but also capable of forming genuine connections, something she once doubted in the cutthroat corporate world. After the meeting concluded, the executives dispersed, some stopping by to shake Kate's hand or exchange a friendly word with Emma, who giggled at their gentle attempts at small talk. Nicholas lingered with Kate and Emma at the conference table, exhaling as the door shut behind the last executive. "That went better than I hoped," he admitted, raking a hand through his hair. "I thought there might be more questions or confusion." Kate smiled. "They respect you. It's obvious. They're happy you found something meaningful outside of work." From her vantage point, Emma looked up at Nicholas. "Daddy, can we see your office?" she asked, eyes sparkling. Nicholas chuckled, nodding. "Certainly, it's just down the hall. Let's give you the grand tour." They strolled through the executive floor, Emma marveling at the sleek design, glass partitions, modern art, and large monitors displaying company metrics. In Nicholas's private office, tall windows overlooked the bustling cityscape, a massive mahogany desk commanding the center of the room. Photographs of business achievements lined the shelves, along with awards and a few personal tokens. A framed snapshot of Nicholas as a teenager with his parents, a small glass sculpture he'd bought during an overseas conference, and now, newly added, a simple photo he'd quietly taken of Emma in the estate's rose garden the day after the test results came in. Emma giggled when she spotted it. "That's me!" she exclaimed, pointing at the framed photo. "When did you take that, Daddy?" He softened. "I snapped it when you were busy arranging those silly flower hats," he explained. "I asked one of the staff to print it and frame it yesterday. That's so I can see you whenever I'm here." Emma moved closer to Nicholas's desk, running her fingers along the polished surface. Kate watched the scene, her heart tugging with gratitude. This was the side of corporate life Emma hadn't been exposed to. Powerful offices and top-floor views. Yet Emma seemed uninterested in the trappings of wealth, more fascinated by the little personal touches that connected her to her father. Nicholas cleared his throat. "How about we head back home soon?" he suggested gently. "We've got a new school orientation to prepare for, and—" He gave Emma a teasing look. "I believe we still owe each other a game of chess with your creative rules." Emma clapped her hands, excitement lighting her face. "Yes! Let's go! Let's go!" She tugged at Kate's arm, who laughed and nodded. They made their way to the elevator, bidding farewell to a few staff members who smiled and nodded politely. In the lobby, the same swirling sculpture captured Emma's attention again, making her tilt her head to see her reflection bend at odd angles. Kate took a moment to observe the synergy between father and daughter, Nicholas offering Emma his hand, explaining the sculpture's abstract meaning. Once again, Kate marveled at how easily Emma had slipped into his life, softening his once impenetrable armor. Outside, the city hummed with afternoon energy. Cars and taxis lined the curb, business people hurried past with cell phones in hand. Nicholas led them to his waiting town car. As they drove away, the towering glass facade of Ashworth Capital receded into the distance. Emma chattered about her impressions of Daddy's big job, while Nicholas listened with genuine delight. Kate nestled back into her seat, letting the day's accomplishments settle over her. They had taken yet another step toward becoming a real family, one that didn't hide or tiptoe around the truth. In the back of her mind, Kate wondered about the next challenge. Perhaps news outlets would soon sniff out the story of Nicholas's daughter. Perhaps extended family or old acquaintances would question her motives. Yet as she looked at Emma's happy smile and Nicholas's tender glance, she felt more ready than ever to face whatever storms might come. Together, they were forging an unbreakable bond that even the harsh scrutiny of the world couldn't tarnish. Late afternoon's golden light filtered through the estate's windows, draping the corridors in a warm glow. The day had been busy, meetings at Ashworth Capital, early conversations with Emma's soon-to-be school, and now a quiet lull allowed everyone to catch their breath. Emma lounged in the sunroom, doodling whimsical sketches in a small notebook, while Kate helped the staff tidy up after tea. Outside, a mild breeze rustled the rose bushes, the petals fluttering like confetti in the gentle wind. In the library, Nicholas stood by the fireplace, absently trailing his fingertips across the carved mantel. A swirl of emotions kept him from sitting still: joy, relief, and a sense of both excitement and apprehension about the family he was rapidly forming. So much had changed in so little time. His once structured world of business deals and strict routines now included bedtime stories, uncertain chess matches, and child-friendly meal plans. And despite the inevitable difficulties they'd face, the prospect of it all filled him with a hope he hadn't realized he was missing. Kate entered quietly, drawn by a subtle intuition that told her Nicholas might need company. He turned at her soft footsteps, his expression brightening. "Hey," he said in a gentle tone. "Hey," Kate replied, stepping closer. She hesitated a moment, gathering courage before resting a hand lightly on his arm. "You all right? You seem pensive." He exhaled softly, leaning against the mantel. "I suppose I am," he admitted. "There's so much swirling in my head. The business is large, and I've always worn that responsibility alone. Now, for the first time, I'm thinking about how to share my life, to rely on others, to prioritize Emma. It's a shift." Kate nodded, her eyes reflecting understanding. "I get it. I've been on my own with Emma for so long. Letting you in, letting myself trust that you'll be here to stay, has been a shift for me too, but a good one." Nicholas glanced at her, a gentle curve shaping his lips. Without overthinking, he raised his hand and gave hers a light squeeze. "It's a big house," he said, voice breaking the hush. "I'd always assumed it would stay quiet, a backdrop for business functions. Now I catch myself imagining it filled with more of Emma's laughter, maybe even—" He paused, color rising in his cheeks. "More children, eventually, if you'd want that. Someday." The hint of a future where Emma might have siblings made Kate's breath hitch. A flurry of warmth unfurled within her, mingling with nerves at how fast everything seemed to be unfolding. Even so, the idea no longer felt impossible or frightening. She lowered her gaze, a small, shy smile appearing. "Someday," she repeated softly, acknowledging the idea without rejecting it. "Let's figure out tomorrow first, but maybe. Yes." A knock on the doorframe made them turn. Emma peered in, hugging her sketchbook to her chest. "Daddy, Mommy, am I interrupting?" she asked timidly, though her eyes danced with curiosity. Nicholas shook his head. "Not at all," he replied, beckoning her in. "Come here, sweetheart. What have you been working on?" Emma bounded forward, brandishing the pages of her notebook. "I drew our family," she announced. "Look." She pointed to a cluster of stick figures. One tall figure with dark hair, one medium figure with lighter hair, and one small figure holding a bunny. The childlike lines were scrawled across a sunny background, complete with an awkwardly drawn house that, in Emma's imagination, represented the estate. Kate fought a swell of emotion at the simple depiction. She brushed a gentle thumb over the page. "That's wonderful," she whispered. "We look so happy." Emma beamed. "Because we are," she affirmed matter-of-factly. "You and Daddy and me, together." Nicholas's heart clenched in a warm ache. He crouched down so he could see Emma at eye level, pressing a light hand on her shoulder. "That's exactly right," he said softly. "Together." Emma's gaze danced from Nicholas to Kate. "Do we get to stay here always?" she asked, her youthful honesty shining through. "Because I love it here." Kate felt Nicholas's hand graze hers, a wordless invitation to speak as one. She offered Emma a reassuring smile. "We'll stay as long as we want to," she said, her voice lifting with certainty. "This is our home now." A tiny squeak of delight escaped Emma's lips. She hopped on tiptoes, hugging her sketchbook to her chest. "Yay!" she exclaimed. "I'm gonna draw more pictures, maybe of the roses and Mr. Coco and—" She trailed off, dashing back toward the sunroom with bounding energy, leaving Nicholas and Kate to exchange a tender smile. The swirl of changes and challenges suddenly felt less daunting when weighed against the unbridled happiness of a 6-year-old girl who'd at last found her dad. "Thank you," Kate said, turning to Nicholas, "for letting Emma see that this world, your world, isn't off-limits to her, for making her dreams real." Nicholas pulled in a shaky breath, emotions too large for neat words. "She deserves everything," he murmured. "And I've discovered I need this too, a life that's more than just business." They drew closer, the hush of the library broken only by faint footsteps of staff in distant hallways. Outside, dusk began to settle, the sky painted in soft lavender and orange. In that quiet moment, neither Kate nor Nicholas worried about the business proposals waiting in emails, or the renovations needed in the old playroom, or the potential media frenzy over Nicholas Ashworth's newly revealed daughter. What mattered was the present, a father, a mother, a child forging a story that once seemed unimaginable. Nicholas touched Kate's cheek gently, a subtle question in his eyes. She tilted her head, letting the warmth of his gesture blossom between them. Slowly he leaned in and pressed a soft, tentative kiss to her forehead, as though sealing a silent promise. When he drew back, Kate's lashes fluttered, tears threatening, but none fell. In the distance, Emma's voice echoed. "Mommy, Daddy, come look. I drew Mr. Coco with a crown of flowers again." Laughter laced her words, filling the corridors with innocence. The child's exuberance pulled them both from the moment. They shared a final, knowing glance, then walked side by side toward the sound of Emma's excitement. Lights glowed along the estate's pathways as dusk darkened to night, each lamp a gentle reminder that even in life's shadows, one could find illumination. In the days ahead, there would be hurdles, navigating fatherhood for the first time, blending two worlds, confronting potential scrutiny from the public. Yet the three of them, Nicholas, Kate, and Emma, were not the same strangers they once were. They walked forward as a family, hand in hand, buoyed by the love that no test or circumstance could deny. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen